Howdy Pilgrims, PappyStu here. Hope this finds you well. You know, a few people have asked me questions and made comments in my submarine duty video that I made quite some time ago. And it made me think about that video, and I mostly talked about, you know, what the lifestyle was like and what our time aboard the submarine was like. You know, just kind of touchy-feely stuff, but I didn't really get into at all what the process was to get into the silent service and nuclear specifically, and, you know, what the job was like when we were there. So I thought I'd make this quick video to share with you guys what the basic process was. You start off, you enlist in the United States Navy, of course. Generally, you go to an A school of your choice, you know, to be a mechanic, to be an electrician, to be an instrument control technician, etc. Then from there, if you're lucky, you get selected to go right to a what's called nuclear power school, followed by a prototype. Kind of OJT. Most of us pulled some type of temporary duty between our A school and our nuclear power school. In my case, it was 9 months aboard the USS Lexington. But then once I did get to nuclear power school, which at the time was in Bainbridge, Maryland, I attended the last class of nuclear power school at Bainbridge, Maryland. And after that, they moved the school down to Orlando, and I hear they've moved it again since then. Basically, nuclear power school that we attended had a pretty high dropout rate because it was pretty much 4 years of college mathematics and science crammed into about a 6-month period. So you pulled lots of long hours, and you know, you had to keep up with the stuff that we covered, and that went from advanced math to chemistry to metallurgy, thermodynamics, heat transfer, fluid flow, basic physics, nuclear physics, reactor theory, electrical theory, reactor design, and you know, reactor operations. So it was a pretty intense course in a relative short period of time, and you know, you'd have 80% success to be passed on from nuclear power school to prototype. And unfortunately, for those who did not make it through nuclear power school, you had to enlist for 6 years to get into the program, and if you failed, then you still had to do the 6 years. So I pulled close to 10 myself. But nuclear power school really wasn't that tough for me. I'm not saying I'm a brainiac or anything, but I've got the fortunate characteristic that I only look at things a time or two, and they pretty much are committed to memory. So that was a big advantage to me. I don't think I have what's called a classic photographic memory as such, but, you know, some facsimile thereof. Anyhow, from that point, after completing nuclear power school rather easily, I wasn't the top of my class and I wasn't the bottom of my class. Always been a B kind of guy due to my basically lazy nature. But then I went to prototype, and for me, prototype was in Ballston Spa, upstate New York. I stayed designated D1G surface 3-loop nuclear reactors intentionally, so I'd go to Ballston Spa because I didn't want to go to Groton, Connecticut, and they weren't giving me the option to go over to Arco in Idaho. So, and then as soon as I got to Ballston Spa, I went to submarine designation right away. So, but I did learn on a D1G prototype. Now, basically what prototype is it's a full-scale mock-up of the engineering plant that you're going to be running. Literally, it's not a simulator. It's literally a copy of that part of the ship or submarine cut out on land and supported like you were at sea, and they run you through the process of how to run it, run drills on you, etc. There again, that was really for some reason really easy for me. As a matter of fact, I was the quickest one to ever qualify there at the prototype, and I was offered an instructor slot, but you know, I had to toot and didn't quite fit in, and I was in a big hurry to get out of there and go to sea, and boy, was that a mistake. I'd actually just been married a few months when I got there, but anyway, so From prototype, I went to Hawaii and went aboard the USS Thomas Jefferson, SSBN 618 Gold. There was a blue crew and a gold crew, and we traded off patrols, alternating with a 2-week overlap in between. Now, when you first go on a submarine, basically you're a liability. You're not an asset, and you're not treated very well. You have to qualify submarines, and you have to learn the watch stations. And you start off with the most rudimentary watch stations, like engine room, lower level, etc. And you move your way up through all the different watch stations to engineering watch supervisor, which is basically the leading enlisted band, senior enlisted band petty officer in charge of the engineering plant on shift. And the watch rotations for the more rudimentary stations tend to be pretty quick in rotation, maybe even 4 on, 4 off. Whereas when you got up to EWS and you were a senior qualified person and really knew your job, you pretty much could end up in like 4 on and 48 off, or even longer rotations, and then you had an 8-hour workday. So, you know, we didn't get a lot of sleep on the boat. I think I mentioned that in the other videos. Some of us, the newer guys, got very little sleep, and the guys that have been around for a long time tended to get too much sleep, so because they were an asset, not a liability. Well, you also had to qualify submarines, and several people have asked me questions about, basically to the tune of, gee, you're around some pretty interesting technology, but you probably don't get to mess with it much. You just run the thing, you just operate. Well, that's not true. When you are a nuke, be you a mechanic, or be you an electrician, or be you an I&C technician, you are hands-on. You operate it, you maintain it, you do all the work associated with it, and you're just a jack of all trades. You're a janitor, and you're a technician, and you're an operator, and you're a warrior during battle stations in your station. And also, I've touched on this a couple times, you have to qualify submarines. You have to qualify on your boat, and you get your dolphins when you do that. Basically what that means is you have to learn every other person's job on the submarine, so that in an emergency, if somebody was killed or injured or what have you next to you, theoretically you could step into their job and do their job and keep the ball rolling and keep everybody alive and coming back home. So not only do you have to learn your job, you have to learn everybody else's job, and that's kind of a long drawn out process, learning everybody's job. And obviously some people are a lot more picky about how much information you retain. That's pretty structured, but still, you know, it's still based on the guy you're getting to sign off your different stations as you go through them. So, you know, even though I was a reactor plant operator and a power plant operator, I also had to learn how to fire a torpedo, load a torpedo in the tube, fire a torpedo. I had to know how to spin up Polaris nuclear warheads and missiles and launch nuclear missiles. I had to be able to step in at the helm in the control room and drive the submarine. Every single station, radio man, sonar man, every station, you have to go in the station, you have to learn how to do the job. So there's an awful lot to being a seasoned hand in the silent service and being a submariner. Once you're fully qualified, you don't just know how to do your job, you know how to do everybody's job. So, you know, I talked about being bored and how monotonous and tedious that is. Well, when you first get there, your hands are really full learning your job, and you don't have time to be bored or stuff. That's stuff that comes later. But and then the patrol life, I kind of explained that already. You go out for 2.5 months, you come back in for a couple of weeks, you go home for 2 months, then you go back out for another 2 weeks on the front end during refit, and then 2.5 month patrol, 2 weeks on the back end. So that's what basically the rotation is, and it just goes on, and you miss your family, and they miss you. And I talked about all that stuff and the other thing, but I forgot to mention just what's really involved in getting qualified and driving submarines for a living. There's a lot of history in the silent service, in the nuclear part of it in particular. This is a good book right here called The Ice Diaries by William R. Anderson, Captain William R. Anderson, and he was the second captain on the USS Nautilus and was the first one to make the excursions under the northern ice pack. you know, during the good old Cold War, or good old bad old Cold War days. So, but this here is a good book to read to get a lot more idea what submarine life is like, etc., for those that are really curious. So I don't know how long I've gone here, probably too long. So without further ado, I'll just wrap this up. I appreciate your time. Hope you found this informative. Submarine life's not for everybody, but it is rewarding in some ways. So I hope this finds you all well and having a fine one. PappyStu said it, and I'm out and on the side.